Hey, what's going on everyone, and welcome back to the Bimmer barn. Today we're going to be replacing these faulty coolant lines on this Alpina B7 with N63 motor. Now this N63 motor is a little bit different than the typical one that comes in your 750 or 550i, and I'm going to tell you guys about some of those differences, but we're also going to be addressing this super common problem before it turns into something catastrophic on this motor. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and without further ado, let's get straight to work. So here we have all the parts that we're going to be servicing today, and as you can see, the big component is going to be these coolant lines. One of them is a feed line. You can see it feeds both turbos, and the other one is going to be a return line that has return lines for both turbos. Then we have a bunch of assorted hose clamps, including some of the one-time use clamps from BMW, so we have a nice clean install. And then we also have this little hose adapter here. This is a T-fitting that we're going to use to replace the factory plastic T-fitting on the N63, which is right behind the alternator. It's known for failing, and we're going to replace that preventatively. And then we have finally the spark plugs that we're going to do as preventative maintenance, because I don't know if they've been done on this car before. It's definitely due for service now. It has about 81,000 miles, and that is why we're also doing these coolant lines as well. They usually tend to leak a lot of fluid, but let me go ahead now and show you guys exactly how bad it is on this car. So with the engine cover removed, we get to see this really pretty engine, and if you're familiar with the N63, then you'll immediately notice some differences. More specifically, this is a modified N63 for the Alpina platform, and because of that, the turbos are going to be different, the charge pipes, as well as these charge air coolers up here that are cooled by coolant run through them. So we're going to be servicing the coolant lines up here, and you can already see the coolant that is starting to escape from the rubber hose, and it's leaking down onto the turbos into this hot valley here. This motor is called a hot V8 or a hot 8 because the exhaust gases actually travel into the middle of the engine instead of out of the sides like a traditional V8 that we're used to. But because of that, the turbos can be put up here. They can kind of be squeezed into this little area, but also as a result, you do get a lot of heat coming straight out of this area, and it will cook any of the coolant lines or some of the oil lines up here as well. Luckily, we don't see anything coming from the oil lines, and we'll have a better chance to inspect everything once we get some of these covers off and some of the hoses. But we're just going to be sticking to a basic service, and instead of servicing all these hard lines right here, we're just going to be replacing the rubber hose sections. And then as you can see here, the Alpina hoses, they actually have a metal T adapter, whereas the factory N63 ones that we have on order, they actually have plastic hose adapters right here, which are gonna fail a lot sooner than these beefy metal versions from Alpina. So we're basically going to be just using the rubber hoses today because it's going to save us a lot of time versus fully removing the turbos to replace the hoses that way. And you guys will learn a really easy way to do this service at home yourself. So let's start off by removing some of the big things up here. I want to get the air boxes out of the way, and then also this reinforcement as well as these bars here so that we can get a better angle, because we're gonna have to remove one of the hoses that comes down here. And remember, the reason that we're replacing the hoses is because they do tend to swell up, and that is what causes the leak to go around the metal pipe. Even though these are one-time use clamps, you could replace them and tighten down those clamps even further, but then again, you are risking that these hoses could eventually just burst at the end. So let's go ahead and get straight to work, and I hope you guys enjoy watching. With everything apart, we're starting to see more signs of heat corrosion, if you'll call it that, on all the plastic components that are part of this hot V setup. So right here we have the intake duct that goes into the turbo, and you'll see that we actually have broken tabs that hold the bolts that go directly to the turbo inlet on both sides actually. So these were definitely broken before, I'll tell you that, but to reinstall them, you have a couple of choices. You could buy these things new and they probably last you maybe another 80,000 miles. But what we'll likely do is get them in place as best as possible. And with the airbox connected, it should be secure enough not to let any extra air around this seal here. So that's one thing to worry about. And then over here, I also noticed, I thought that I broke this hose right here. You can see it's clearly in two pieces now, but I just realized that there's actually oil dripping down around the high pressure fuel pump here. And it looks like this was probably cracked or broken before, and vapors from the valve cover were coming out here and causing probably like a good oil smell, I'd imagine. Now this car does have an oil burning issue, I think right now about a quart every 2,000 miles, I think maybe more, but we're gonna go ahead and check that. That could be a contributing cause to the oil burning, but I think that we might just have a leak somewhere else. So we'll definitely keep an eye open. I imagine underneath the car might give us a better idea, because up here it looks really nice and clean. But anyways, we've got a really good look at everything. We can get access to the hoses on top that we could do before. Now I did remove the coolant tank right here, the auxiliary one, so we could have better access to the hose that comes from the pump into the turbos here. And then most notably down here, we have that Y adapter that I told you is so known to fail because of the heat that it's exposed to. So that's the one that we're gonna be replacing with the brass adapter, and then we're gonna do all the rubber hoses up here. So let's go ahead and get right back to work. So with these big upper lines out of the way, I'm able to get access to those hoses that you saw me working on a minute ago. And it takes a minute to get all of that crumbly hose stuff out. And we're gonna be replacing it, like I said, with this barb fitting right here. This is a 3/8 inch barb fitting, and it's gonna go to both of those hoses there. And the last one is this one right here, which we need to route back under the alternator cable. Now this is a little bit of a different angle than the factory one, but I think it's gonna work fine for our circumstance. We just have to make sure that this hose isn't pinched off or anything. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and install this now, and then we can remove our lines, our hoses. One of them goes to a clamp, I believe right here, and the other one goes to a clamp right there. So we're gonna remove these hoses, get these T adapters out, and install them with the new rubber lines as well. And then once that's done, we can do the spark plugs and then button up the car. So I want to take a moment to show you guys the differences between the old pipes and the new ones that we're installing. And like I said, we're going to be recycling this Alpina part right here because it's unique to the Alpina motor. And the factory pipes, which we got off of, I think, FCP Euro, these ones come with the factory green plastic Y connector. And so being that these are known to fail, you know, just the plastic breaking down from heat exhaustion, we're going to go ahead and reuse this using all the new and fresh rubber, including the fitting here, which as you can see, they can tend to get brown, and when they get brown, that means that they're ready to break. But we're going to put together the hoses just in the same orientation as it was before, and then reinstall all these hoses into the car and do the same thing on the left side as well. So let's go ahead and get back to work. There we have all the hoses connected and everything buttoned up as well. The only thing that I'm going to recommend now is that we need to top off this auxiliary coolant reservoir and start the car up, which will turn on the auxiliary pump for this system. And you're going to want to top it off, and it's going to start leveling out as it circulates to the turbos and to the intercoolers. But once that's topped off, you're going to go ahead and cap off the system, and then I would recommend letting the car get to temperature and giving a really close inspection to all these clamps and joining surfaces that we just changed, because the last thing you want to do is have another leak right under this engine cover and you wouldn't even know. So definitely let the car get to temperature and make sure you don't have any leaks coming out of these connection points down there as well. And that is basically all you need to do to address that problem, and you won't have to worry about it for the near future. And I would recommend getting some metal hose adapters like these ones if you don't have Alpina hoses like this car does, because that's going to be a great long-term solution as well, and you won't have to worry about that plastic piece breaking down over time. So that's going to conclude our video for today. I went and replaced the spark plugs as well while you weren't looking. So that's done on this car, and we just need to, like I said, start it up, top it off. We're also going to do an oil change today, but I don't need to show you guys that. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video though, and learning about some of the differences between the typical N63 motor and the one that's in the Alpina B7. It's a really cool engine, and I'm glad to see some of the differences that were improved upon from factory. But let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below, and be sure to leave a like on the video before you go. As always, I hope everyone has an amazing day, and we will see you in the next video.